Leader.
Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that at its rising today, Parliament do stand adjourned to a date to be fixed.
The question is that Parliament do now adjourn. Mr. Daniel Tan. Sorry, Mr. Dennis Tan.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. A good public transportation is critical to our city, people and economy. With 13 straight years of ridership expansion, Singaporeans are highly dependent on this public good. The government's drive towards a car-light society creates a stronger imperative for a seamlessly working public transport system. The feedback from the ground on the most recent fare review exercise has presented us in this House with a timely opportunity to look critically at our public transportation system. Our starting point must be to put our commuters first over other stakeholders and be world-class leaders in areas such as reliability, affordability and quality. On the issue of rail reliability, not too long ago, MRT breakdowns became a familiar yet unwelcome part of our news cycle. Our bus services were inadequate to fully run parallel to our train systems, and private bus operators had to be called in to help with some of the major breakdowns in the past few years. The government has more recently injected public funds to nationalize our public transportation assets and infrastructure. Various schemes were rolled out, aimed at expanding and upgrading its public transportation infrastructure. One can only imagine what would have happened if the government had not chosen to invest and kept to its previous stance of leaving entirely to market forces. With these investments, we have seen mean kilometers between failures, MKBF, improve from 180,000 train per kilometer to 661,000 train per kilometer between 2017 and the first 3 quarters of 2018. With a new reliability target of 1 million train kilometer by 2020, it may appear that our train reliability is on the up. But train delays are not really a thing of the past, as can be seen in the recent train delays late last year and early this year. Let us also not forget that the latest MKBF statistics did not include delays caused by the signalling works, which SMRT and LTA have reportedly agreed to exclude, nor did it include delays of not more than 5 minutes. MKBF measures delays of more than 5 minutes. Notwithstanding their exclusion from the internationally used MKBF benchmark, commuters may still have lingering doubts on the reliability of our MRT system if we completely disregard delays of not more than 5 minutes. MKBF is also an operational metric that may not truly measure the convenience to passengers, a point made in a 2013 OECD International Transport Forum discussion paper entitled Measuring and Valuing Convenience and Service Quality. The authors also mentioned that measuring delays from a more customer-focused perspective requires appropriate data collected in a sufficient level of detail, such as number of passengers affected and passenger hours delay. Such data do not seem to be within the public sphere currently and will be necessary if we are to move towards a more holistic, commuter-centric public transport system. In other words, convenience and service quality should be measured and reported. With such big investments as I've mentioned earlier, the affordability of fares is crucial. Even as we are second among 12 cities in affordability from a recent NTU study, our focus should be on Singaporeans and how they are impacted by fare prices. Indeed, the yearly review of transportation fares by the Public Transport Council are always closely watched by the public. The 2018 exercise saw the first use of the revised fare review formula with a new component known as the Network Capacity Factor, NCF, and the first fare hike, which hit the cap of 4.3% in over 3 years, drew many negative responses from citizens. Even as the government has argued the case for NCF, there are many other views expressed about this new component. One Straits Times reader expressed that this factor is akin to taxing commuters twice. Current nominated Member of Parliament, the Honourable Associate Professor Walter Teixeira, opined that the factor makes a rise in fares more likely as capacity will rise faster than ridership in the short term. Straits Times senior transport correspondent Mr. Christopher Tan also pointed out the irony that a negative NCF will imply more crowded buses and trains, an outcome that no commuter wants to see. For now, I note in passing that even as SMRT and SBS Transit are mandated to transfer 5% of the added fare revenue to the Public Transport Fund that funds subsidy vouchers for vulnerable groups, we must maintain a vigilant watch on the impact of such fare hikes on our disadvantaged groups, especially to the groups that still prefer cash transactions that saw the highest fare hikes. Perhaps the Minister can share on how MOT intends to help such individuals transit to cashless payments. Our public transportation system needs to deliver on quality, most important of which is the punctuality of services and the minimizing of all delays. Beyond that, it will also require timely and accurate information to be delivered by operators on matters of relevance such as service disruptions. Minimizing bus bunching, ensuring a comfortable ride, and cost-effectively improving physical comfort such as improving ventilation on our open-air MRT station and bus interchanges. We understand that current service quality lapses are penalized with fines, but have these fines exercised a sufficient deterrent effect thus far, including delays of not more than 5 minutes? There may be scope to include service quality in our fare regulation framework to incentivize public transport operators to work actively on service quality and to maintain a higher standards in these areas. All the above requires entrenching a service culture among our operators, one that places the commuters at the heart of everything they do. This is, of course, easier said than done. Our public transport personnel needs to be understanding when facing problems and take flack from disgruntled passengers with a smile. At this point, I wish to put on record the sincere appreciation that we in the Workers' Party have for all our public transport workers tirelessly working to ensure that our systems are running smoothly every day. Many Singaporeans spend a good part of their lives on public transport. As a public good that is inextricably tied to quality of life and is critical for our economy, we must spare no effort in evaluating all transport policies to ensure that we put our commuters first and be class-leading in reliability, affordability, and quality. Here, I'd like to put forth some suggestions for MOT to consider in improving our public transportation system moving forward. Firstly, we can do more to incentivize better monitoring of reliability and service quality by PTOs. Beyond and alongside the traditional measure of NKBF for more than 5 minutes only, I would suggest having other categories of NKBF for all incidents such as less than 5 minutes, between 5 to 30 minutes, and more than 30 minutes. Alongside an expansion of NKBF metrics, we can be more holistic in our approach to measure reliability. Seeing that SMRT is part of the community of metros, or in short, COMET, we can also get our rail PTOs to work towards a full implementation of the COMET scorecard with disclosure of its results on a yearly basis to the public. Covering areas such as customer, environment, safety, etc., it is a balanced approach to understand the public transport system and aligns operator incentives to improve our public transport system beyond just the current singular metric that is operationally focused. LTA and PTC do run surveys to gather feedback. A recent survey for the 2040 Land Transport Master Plan has concluded that commuters prize convenience the most in Singapore's land transport system, followed by connectivity and fast travel time. However, the survey did not touch on the reliability and affordability of our future public transport. As for service quality, while LTA and the PTC do run surveys of customer satisfaction for public transport, the numbers of satisfied commuters look very high compared to a similar survey run by the Institute of Service Excellence, or ISE. Perhaps third-party evaluators like the ISE who run independent surveys can provide a picture less likely to draw accusations of bias. Such independently derived scores can then be directly factored into the fare review formula, where positive commuter experiences should be rewarded, while stagnant or negative commuter experience should be a factor against fare increase. Next, in November 2016, the government said that the PTC had excluded service quality as a factor from the fare review formula, as the plan was for the government to, I quote from Minister Common 1 in his PQ answer of 7 November 2016, regulate and work with the operators independently to improve service levels. unquote. And in doing so, kept the, and I quote from Minister Kaur again, fare formula relatively straightforward without the complication of differentiating fare adjustments on account of service quality, unquote. But has this really worked as intended? I believe that a direct link between the ability to raise prices and service quality will help to improve the total commuter experience. The inclusion of service quality as perceived by the commuters themselves, realistically measured by an independent body, can help mitigate the risk of operators raising fares as a result of pursuing other goals at the expense of service quality. I should emphasize that service quality should be merely one of the factors and not the only or predominant factor. Some may argue that with the recent improvement we have seen in MKBF, it is unnecessary to link fare review to service quality. However, if MKBF and overall service quality are both truly improving, that is all the more reason why now is a good time to introduce service quality as a factor in the annual fare review exercise to ensure that service quality will keep improving and not go backwards in future. My second point, also related to the topic of fare review, is that we ought to consider including the profits of public transport operators as one factor in the fare review formula. The size of operating profits derived from both transport and transport-related lines of business, such as retail operations, should be one of the factors considered in allowing fares to be raised, but not the only or predominant factor. To any who may proffer the superficial view that this will create a perverse incentive for public transport operators to run their outfits in such a way as to lower profits so as to be allowed to raise fares, my reply would be that no reasonable profit-maximizing company would deliberately lower profitability so as to increase the chances of being allowed to raise fares when the linkage between profitability and fare review is small and indirect. My proposal is not without precedent. In Hong Kong's formula for adjusting their MTR fares, the Fare Adjustment Mechanism, or FAM, the profits of the MTR Corporation are set within the factor of productivity, where productivity is revenue from the corporation's Hong Kong transport operations divided by its expenses relating to its Hong Kong transport operations. In a public consultation in Hong Kong on the FAM in 2016, the Hong Kong government noted that 1. A majority of the public submissions requested that the profitability of the MTR Corporation should be reflected in the FAM. 2. When the profit of the MTR Corporation in a particular year reaches a certain level, the MTR Corporation should not increase fares. And 3. A new profit factor which reflects the profit made in a particular year should be added to the existing FAM formula to reduce fare increase. Hong Kong's experience can offer insights into how Singapore can go about tweaking our fare regulation framework to account for newly proposed factors. It is possible for us to factor in profit via the current productivity extraction factor. This would be to redefine or tweak the current factor, the current definition to account for the PTO's profitability. Since productivity as a factor is a minus, any increase in this factor would lead to a lower fare hike for commuters and will be more equitable for commuters. The extent of profits in an oligopolistic, highly regulated industry with huge barriers to entry like public transport cannot and should not be completely irrelevant to the ability to raise fares. Third, there is room for public transport operators to put in more of their profits from their operations into our various funds investing in long-term public transport quality. Currently, 5% of additional fare revenues earned by the public transport operators are transferred to the Public Transport Fund to subsidize vulnerable groups. A further step can be taken in this regard. Retail operations in MRT stations will not be profitable without the infrastructure in or around the stations. Mandating a level of profits from retail operations to be added to the Railway Sinking Fund and the Rail Infrastructure Fund will move us towards a more equitable development of our infrastructure. Having benefited from the fleet expansion to the Bus Service Enhancements Programme, a similar profit transfer mechanism can also apply to our bus operators leasing and operating the various bus interchanges. Fourth, timely information is needed about service disruptions and planned early closing announcements. There are still many commuters that are less technologically inclined and may not have the needed apps installed. We can consider a multi-channel, multi-platform, and multilingual approach to send out broadcast messages on service disruptions, planned early closing, and late openings, for example, via electronic notice boards and radio, not unlike what the Ministry of Home Affairs has done with alerts in times of emergencies. Information that's being piped out must be both timely and accurate. Complaints of inaccurate estimated waiting time, information about alternative bus arrangements, and even lack of reports of delays by public transport operators are common over social media. The government should work to ensure that such complaints will become a thing of the past. Lastly, while the bulk of the attention is now rightly given to our oldest two lines, we should not forget that our other lines are reaching their age milestones as well. To not repeat past mistakes, the government must have renewal plans in place. I am therefore glad to note that there will be major enhancement and renewal works for North East Line starting in 2019. With this in mind, I would like to call on the government to commit to major renewals for rail assets under the new rail financing framework at every 15-year milestone. Deputy Speaker, sir, in Mandarin. 副议长先生，一个方便有效率的公共交通系统是我国的经济、人民和社会发展的关键。要人民减少用车，实现我国成为一个空气清新、环境优良的宜居社会，公共交通系统必须是满足交通需求的主要模式。要建设一个方便有效率的公共交通系统，我认为可靠性、车资是否负担得起和高质量是3个重点。地铁的可靠性是一项不断在进行中的工作。我们注意到政府对公共交通资产和基础设施的投资确实有所改善。2018年的平均故障公里数 (MKBF) 也有改进。但是，只是关注平均故障公里数有其局限，因为这意味我们将只关注地铁延迟超过5分钟的事件，而忽略了那些延迟不超过5分钟的事故。去年年底，检讨车资的新方程式引进了新的网络容量因素指标，也就是把公共交通乘客容量的增加和乘客使用率纳入检讨车资的考虑因素，以更好地反映营运成本的变化。我们必须密切关注车资涨幅对弱势群体的影响。此外，我们更需要确保公共交通系统能提供高质量的服务，这包括舒适度和营运商提供及时、准确的信息。在此，共产党感谢所有公共交通业服务人员的付出。公共交通对我们的经济和社会的发展至关重要，我们必须不遗余力地改善公共交通系统。我有5个建议：第一，通过进行第三方的独立调查，以整体积分卡制度和服务质量作为车资调整公式的一部分，来激励营运商，同时也用来对可靠性和服务质量的整体监控。第二，将公共交通营运商的利润作为车资调整公式的一部分。第三，将部分零售业务的利润纳入地铁累积基金和地铁基础建设基金。第四，采用多管道、多平台而多种语言的方式，及时而准确地传达有关服务中断的信息。第五，共产党吁请政府在新地铁融资框架下，每15年对地铁资产进行大规模的更新。总的来说， 我们现在来庆祝在公共交通系统方面所取得的成就，还是为时过早。在改善公共交通系统方面，我们还有许多工作要做，特别是探讨如何能够更进一步在可靠性、车资是否负担得起和高服务质量等方面，为通勤者提供更好的乘车经验。
Mr. Tan, you have 1 minute left.
Deputy Speaker, sir. In closing, we should refrain on patting ourselves on the back on our current progress in our public transportation system. There is still work to do in improving our public transportation system, particularly in putting our commuters first over other stakeholders in areas such as reliability, affordability, and quality. Thank you.
Dr. Janil?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank Mr. Dennis Tan for his speech and for his comments. I was worried as he began that he was about to deliver my COS speech on my behalf because I heard that he wanted to put commuters first, so do I, that he wanted to thank our public transport workers, so do I, that he believes that reliability, quality and affordability are important components of how we think about our public transport system, so do I. He was then a bit more worried because he went on to congratulate us for 13 years of straight growth of public transport ridership, and we're quite proud of that, thank you very much. He confirmed that our reliability has improved on a regular basis, in fact exceeding expectations to 671,000 mean kilometers between failure when we have set ourselves a target of 400,000 mean kilometers between failure for this year. So I take it he agrees that we have a world-class public transport system and is largely supportive of the model and the direction and the efforts that we're making, and I thank him for his kind words. He has made some suggestions about how we can improve, and these suggestions are worth examining as we have to consider how we can achieve the aims that we have set out and that he agrees with. If we look at any suggestions for improving our public transport system, I think there are a few preconditions that we have to think of first as we assess them. The first is, do we have existing mechanisms? In truth, every mechanism has a cost in time, a cost in compliance burden, and a financial cost, and also a cost in its effectiveness. So do we have existing mechanisms? What are these existing mechanisms? How do they work? Secondly, we have to ask, are our existing mechanisms effective? Are they getting the job done? And thirdly, we should ask, how are Singaporeans responding? How is our system and Singaporeans responding? Before we get into that, we might also ask, are we actually already doing some of the things that he's suggesting, or anybody is suggesting? For some of the examples that he's talking about, they are a financial basis to incentivize better operations. I mean, you can look at it from the profit point of view, you can look at it from the fare point of view, you can look at it as penalties, you can look at it as where you redistribute it, but essentially you're using money to incentivize better behavior on the part of the operators, and taking some of that money and rewarding commuters. So there are two arms to it, a financial penalty or a financial reward, and then how you return it to the system or to the commuter. And frankly, as he has described in great detail, we are doing that in a number of ways across a number of mechanisms using a variety of models with different operators. Are we trying to get more information out to commuters that are affected? Certainly we are. I mean, electronic notice boards, social media, broadcast messages. We are experimenting and we're trying, and certainly we can do a lot better, and we will continue to experiment and to attempt to service Singaporeans better as they take public transport. But let me go into some of the discussion about the mechanisms and effectiveness. I would start by saying, firstly, mean kilometers between failure is not the only metric that we use. And Mr. Tan suggested that we should broaden our consideration of what counts. Mean kilometers before failure is one, but there are a whole bunch of other things that we do in our regulatory framework as we interface with the operators. MKBF is only one of those things. How do we regulate? Well, we have operating licenses. We have codes of practice. We have maintenance processes, standards, maintenance performance standards, operating performance standards. These are codified, they're written down, they're agreed upon, and as a result of which LTA and the operators work very closely together. We have engineers that are embedded in the operator teams. Reports come up to us on a regular basis. And failure at any one of these points can result in a financial penalty, as he has described on my behalf. Thank you very much. But not only that, these frameworks, we can tighten them on a regular basis. And LTA has been tightening them and adjusting them and making them more effective on a regular basis. Another mechanism is the model that we use, and we've transitioned to the bus contracting model in 2016, the new rail financing framework in 2018. We've used models such as the BSCP to increase the capacity for buses. We've invested in engineering capacity. We've invested in how to develop capability locally. These are all a variety of mechanisms to improve reliability and improve the quality as we put commuters at the heart of the experience. On top of that, we've worked quite hard around inclusion. We've tried to make sure that it's not just about the capacity, not just about what we can do technically, but how we can reach out to a greater number of Singaporeans. Since 2016, every MRT station has at least had one barrier-free, today all have 2 access routes which are barrier-free to all the MRT stations, wheelchair-accessible lifts, all trains have a wheelchair space, all bus interchanges are barrier-free, wheelchair boarding, wheelchair-accessible toilets. Not to say we've done everything. We haven't completed all the bus stops. There are bus stops that are not entirely wheelchair accessible. We're up to 97%. We will slowly close the gap. We've installed nearly 50 lifts at pedestrian overhead bridges, 200 kilometers of covered linkways. We're moving aggressively to make sure that public transport is available and accessible to an increasing number of Singaporeans. We've committed to making sure that 80% of Singaporeans are within a 10-minute walk to the MRT station. And we have been increasing the number of rail lines, the number of trains, as we move along that journey, pun intended. So we've increased capacity, buses, trains, rail lines, carrying capacity. We've increased inclusivity. More and more Singaporeans are able to access our public transport system, our public transport services. But not only that, we've worked on increasing affordability. So over the last 5 years, fares have gone down by 1.2%. Mr. Tan is concentrating on the most recent fare review, and he is at liberty to do so. But on average, if we take a slightly broader view, over the last 5 years, fares have gone down by 1.2%. And in that time, wages have risen by 17.7%. Inflation's gone up 6.5%. So on balance, the amount that people spend on fares out of their household income has gone down. It's gone down for the lowest quintile, the second quintile, the lowest decile, the second decile. We measure this, we track this, and we know that on average, expenditure as a proportion of your income has gone down. Not only that, less well known is the fact that 1.8 million commuters are on a concession scheme. 1.8 million commuters are on some form of concession scheme. The biggest single group, of course, are seniors, and that will only continue to rise as our population slowly ages. But students, NSFs, low-wage workers, a whole lot. So out of our population, 1.8 million of the people who regularly use public transport on a daily basis are already benefiting from the concession schemes that we have. And they, of course, had an even lower increase in the last fare review that Mr. Tan was talking about, only 1 cent. So we've worked hard to make these mechanisms work for us. And as a result, reliability has improved, affordability has improved, inclusivity has improved. So we believe the mechanisms are effective. And as Mr. Tan has pointed out, these mechanisms are resulting in an increasing number of Singaporeans choosing to take public transport. Year-on-year growth of ridership, greater proportion of Singaporeans at peak hour choosing not to use a private car as their primary mode of transport, rather to use shared public transport. Satisfaction levels have risen as well in tandem. So that would all suggest that we are moving in the right direction. All would suggest that we're moving in the right direction. So perhaps we need to consider some mechanisms to make sure we maintain our trajectory. I think that's reasonable. But if we're already doing some of these things, or many of these things, we should refine them, get them right, tweak them, make them better. But I think we have to start on the premise that things are improving, things are going well, the mechanisms are working, and we do need to make sure that we hang on to our fundamental principles. And my fundamental principles, it turns out, are very much similar to what Mr. Tan has articulated, that we do this with a view to putting the commuter at the center of the experience. We focus on reliability, on quality, on affordability, and we make sure that over time, over the long term, we do this in a fair way. Everybody needs to participate in it, and the help needs to be distributed to those who need it most. We do this in a sustainable way. We have to have long-term financial viability, a model that attracts competitive participation, and we do this in an effective way around reliability, comfort, and to continually increase the participation of Singaporeans in public transport. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The question is that Parliament do now adjourn. As many as are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.